Welcome to our podcast, friends. Thank you so much for listening. If you like our podcast and want to support us, please subscribe or follow us. And please don't forget to click the notification bell so you will be notified when new episodes release. Thank you, and God bless.
Good morning, Father.
Good morning, Son.
We meet again.
Yes. Yes, thank you for this.
Keep finding ourselves in this situation. Don't know how it happens. Do you come here often?
Can I buy you a drink? Okay. There you go.
Yeah. We got to stop. We got to stop meeting like this.
There you go. People are starting to talk.
Right. Today.
Oh.
Yeah. I kind of hope so, I guess. I think that means we're doing a good job of
Yes, sir.
chatting.
Yes.
All right. So today we're talking about prayer.
Yes.
In a very general sense.
Yes. A
Because-
general introduction to, yeah.
Yeah, we love our rabbit trails, so we're going to start off easy
Yes.
and try not to get lost.
Yes. We have to find some way, again, to ask people if they want us to go deeper into some of these areas of prayer, because, again, prayer is something that is essential to our life as Catholic Christians, to our relationship with the Lord. And I did give a whole semester to the permanent diaconate aspirants. And that's what I was doing when I was in Dallas. Every year I'd give them a whole semester, a class on spirituality. And so prayer and spirituality are both, very closely tied together. So,
Wow, yeah.
And the reason we talked about doing this podcast on prayer is because we talked about relationships the other day. The other section on relationships and how prayer is, again, relational and essential to understanding prayer as relationship.
Yeah. We do, that is something that we keep talking about. We need to figure out how to do. So hopefully by the time you're listening to this, we have figured it out. Just to invite people, if they hear something that they want to learn more about, to communicate that with us so we can kind of get into it further, make another episode maybe on stuff that is just deeper on specific topics, not just prayer, but anything that we discuss. I feel like we've all got plenty of opportunity to learn here, so yeah, it's all good.
Amen. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so first, I think maybe, I think first it'd be a matter of understanding that a lot of times when we talk about prayer, usually a person would understand prayer to be the recitation of a formula. For example, the Our Father or the Hail Mary or the Glory Be or the morning consecration or devotional things, right? So I think our separated brethren would call those maybe devotionals, reading scripture or that kind of prayer, right? And that's it. That's a beginning, and that is how we're taught. We're taught how to pray. We're taught how to recite prayers, right? And that carries us on for a long ways until we come to a point where we recognize that there has to be something more. And that goes back to the idea that we talked about the other day in terms of relationships, that we need to come to a deeper understanding that prayer is not a task, but prayer is a dialogue between myself and God, and it is a way of communicating. So as in all relationships, it depends on how much time you invest in that relationship that you see how important that relationship is to you. And so there's an investment of time. And so a lot of people don't know how to pray because they've never been told that they can say things from their heart. It's for them, it's a matter of like, yeah, I can only say the Our Father so many times. I can only pray the Rosary so many times. And it's not, I don't feel myself growing, right, in my relationship. And it's because it's mostly recitation.
Yeah.
And getting back real quick to what we spoke about before, that in terms of relational, is that since we're made in the image and likeness of God, and God is essentially revelatory and relational, that there is something in us that desires that. Philosophers and theologians will talk about our need to transcend ourselves, that is, to step outside of ourselves. And that comes from the fact that we are made in the image and likeness of God, and therefore that there is a need in me to reveal myself, to be transparent, to be known by another. And that's part of our likeness and image of God, the fact that Father, Son, and Spirit, that relationship that they have, right? Therefore, then, the act of praying is supposed to be that engagement, that relating to the Father through the Son in the Spirit. And that's how we would define it. So it's a matter of understanding that prayer, again, if all you learn from this podcast is that prayer is more than a task, I will be happy, because prayer is not a task. It is a relationship.
Yeah, and that's something that I would say probably a lot of my Protestant friends would be a hang up, right? That will you pray to Mary? You pray to saints? Yes. But they think of prayer as worship. And
right.
While prayer can be a part of worship.
Yes. Or worship is prayer, but not all prayer is worship. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like the fullness of the definition.
Right.
So the big takeaway in what does prayer mean? Like the definition of prayer is, would you say, is just the act of, I don't know, building that relationship? Like, how would you say it very, like, succinct, very short, very directly?
It is the opening up of your heart to another, and that other would be God, right, in terms of prayer, because it is relational. And in terms of the saints that we pray with, it's a relationship with them. And it goes back to the communion of saints that we believe in, that others do not believe in, other faiths, traditions do not believe in. For them, it is once a person is dead, there's no relationship. And for us, that is not true. We believe that the communion continues to exist in spite of death. And so I can ask St. Stephen to pray for me. I can ask the Blessed Mother to pray for me. I can ask St. John to pray for me. And I go to them as another member of the community of belief. And my prayer to them is, either, intercede for me. Basically it's their intercessions. You ask them to intercede for you, as you intercede for yourself, as you ask God for different things, virtue, strength, whatever it might be. But very, very succinctly, it is a matter of raising your mind and your heart to God. That is probably the shortest definition of prayer. For us as Carmelites, I'm making you an honorary Carmelite, I guess, now, since we're
nice
spending so much time together. For Carmelites, St. Teresa of Jesus says that prayer is spending time alone with one we know loves us. It is an act of friendship, right? So again, it's about relationship. How do you understand friendship? How do you understand relationships? And that's one of the things that we talked a little bit about in the last episode on relationship and how it affects our understanding of God is, how do you see relationships in your life? How do you perceive relationships? How do you relate to others? What is your self-understanding in relationship to others? Because that's going to inform how you approach God, how you see God, and how your prayer life is affected by that perception of who God is, how I understand God to be, right? And sometimes what can happen is prayer can be very it should be a dialogue, but sometimes it's a monologue in that I am talking to God. I'm not talking with God. And
Yeah, you're not
so
listening.
it's, yeah. Yeah, you're basically just reciting things, right? And it's a recitation, and it's not really an interaction between people. I have a quote here that I want to read to you from. This is by Father Louis Bouillet, who belonged to the Congregation of the Oration. Um, he is a very good spiritual writer, spiritual theologian, Father Louis Bouillet. And this is what he says, and we'll break this down. He says, "A he whom you speak about, but who does not speak to you or you to him, is not actually someone to you, but only something. Even though you force yourself to think otherwise, even though you know abstractly that he exists personally as you do. It is only the you to whom I speak who is someone to me. And shall we say, it is above all the you who has spoken to me who becomes someone to me effectively." And what he's getting there to, what he's trying to get at there is that when it comes to prayer, am I really manifesting myself, my heart, to the Lord? Am I really trusting that I can open myself to him and reveal the thoughts of my heart, whether I'm frustrated, whether I'm angry, whether I'm thankful, whether I'm content, whether it's worship, whether it's intercession for someone else, whatever it might be. Can I really be there as myself and not as talking to a stranger or asking something from someone that I don't know or I don't trust, right? So I think part of this is that idea of, as we spoke of, I think I forget what podcast we're talking, how our separated brethren talk about how, Jesus as my personal Savior. I mean, is there a personal relationship with the Lord? Do I speak to him as a friend? And that's one of the things Teresa talks about when she talks about prayer. Teresa of Jesus, Teresa of Avila. Teresa talks about, it's about friendship, which then, again, in the current culture, the question we have to ask ourselves is, do we understand what the dynamics of friendship is? So how does that affect my prayer life? How do I understand that?
That's really interesting too, yeah, because a lot of people right now think that it is not kind to tell somebody something contrary to what they want to do or want to believe.
Right.
But, I would always say my best friends are the ones who would look at me and go, are you sure you want to do that?
I would rethink that.
Yeah, I think those are the good friends.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Right.
Most definitely. But I think that's part
of it.
Jesus
is not challenging you
right.
on what you're doing, then you're either a saint or you're not listening, I guess. Goes back to the whole actual conversation part.
When I was here before at Mary Lake as superior back in mid-90s, my whole theme back then was to the friars that I was living with. It was always the thing was that if the gospel is not making you uncomfortable, then you're not listening to the gospel, because it's always convicting. It should convict us. It should, and not because it's a condemnation or a judgment. It is a challenge to open ourselves up to that charity and that love and that mercy of the Lord that he asks of us. So, and going back to what you were saying just now about a friend, it has to be someone that loves me and someone that I know loves me that I'm willing to listen to. If it's someone that I don't trust, someone that I don't particularly have a relationship with, if they criticize me, I take it as criticism, and I'm going like, okay, well, let me tell you how the cow ate the cabbage. I can tell you a couple of things too.
Yeah.
But if it's somebody that I know loves me and is looking for my well-being, then I will listen. I will take it into consideration and reflect on it. And again, it goes back to this whole idea of prayer as an opening up of the heart. And originally we have in the Gospels when the disciples tell Jesus, well, John teaches his disciples to pray in a certain way. So why don't you teach us how to pray? And then that's when Jesus says, when you pray, blah, blah. And then we have the Our Father, right? The Lord's Prayer. And this, from the very beginning of the community, this was considered like the ideal prayer. This was part of the whole thing, was about praying the Lord's Prayer. Not just the recitation of the Lord's Prayer, but actually breaking down what are the petitions that are in the Lord's Prayer. And during the patristic age in the church, during the early church fathers, there was a big focus on this. It was always going back to the Our Father. And even now in the Catechism, we were talking about the Catechism earlier, even now in the Catechism, the Our Father is something that is broken down and explained. It's part of our heritage as Christians to look at the petitions of the Our Father and to see it as the model of prayer. But if we look at it as petitions, what does petition mean? Petition means in that I'm asking something from someone, which means fundamentally it goes back to relationship. I'm asking something from someone. And it goes back to, so what is the relationship between myself, the petitioner, and Christ, the Holy Spirit, God the Father, the Trinity? What is my relationship to the one that I am petitioning? How do I see myself in that relationship, right? So that's part of the whole idea of relating and what prayer is. So again, going back to the whole idea of it has to be more than the recitation of a formula. The formula is there for a reason, for a purpose, just like our liturgy. When we're supposed to pray the Eucharist, we're supposed to pray the liturgy. And sometimes we're on autopilot and we're not really paying attention to what we're saying. And sometimes you can tell when it's just recitation, and sometimes it takes effort and intention on our part to actually enter into and pray the liturgy of the Eucharist, or to prayerfully listen to the liturgy of the Word as the first part of the Eucharist. So again, it's about listening. It is about relationship. It is about attention to the other. So it's more than just recitation. If I pay attention to, and this is some of the things that the patristics would talk about in the Our Father, just start with Our Father. What does that mean? So it is my Father, your Father, the Father of my enemies, the Father of those who hate me, the Father of those who love me, the Father of those who I don't care for. So it's all the same Father, so we all share that. So how am I treating my siblings in the Lord, and what is that relationship like and about, and what should it be? So I see a question forming on your face. What is that?
No, I'm just.
I see the wheels turning.
Just thinking about it, just taking it in. We had a friend of the family growing up. He's a deacon at the church we attended. Deacon Ed Nartowitz. He's a beautiful man, beautiful wife. Beautiful family. Just I love those people. Huh?
At St. Anne's?
Oh no, growing up. Okay. So down at,
because there's a
St.
Deacon
Paul's
Ed at St. Anne's, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But anyway, I remember he had a conversation with my mom once about breaking down line by line the Our Father, and it stuck to her. So it's just kind of all that's percolating in my mind as you're sharing.
Okay. So there's some qualities, that we should ask ourselves about when it comes to my prayer. One, am I comfortable, first, before I talk of the qualities, am I comfortable of speaking to God outside of the formulas, right? And we Catholics are really bad at spontaneous prayer, because when we're taught formula prayers, and that's all we consider prayer. When somebody says, "Would you pray over me?" You're like, what? Would you lead the prayer? Okay, Our Father who art in. Okay, so
Yeah. Yeah.
And so one of the things too is first, like, am I comfortable? And getting comfortable in your own private prayer with the Lord to stop. I don't say stop using formula prayers, but in between those formulaic prayers, to just open up and just speak what's on your mind, what's on your heart, what's bothering you. And at times, myself, I'm very comfortable with, after the long relationship I've had with the Lord, sometimes I'm very comfortable when I walk into the chapel and I look at the tabernacle, like, today I am not happy with you. I really don't want to talk to you, but here I am. So, okay, let's just do this. And it's okay. I'm comfortable with that, and I'm sure he's comfortable with me. But one of the things, and again, the qualities of prayer that we should ask ourselves about, maybe take an inventory about this, is my prayer, is there a quality of devotion? And by that, I don't mean sentimentality or feelings of devotion. By devotion, I mean, am I committed to this relationship? That kind of devotion is what I mean. Am I committed to this relationship? If hard times, good times, dry times, mediocre times, boring times, right? Am I committed to this relationship? Am I going to be consistent in this relationship? So that's one thing we should ask ourselves.
Does it have its proper place?
Yeah, and by devotion, I mean like a devotion to the person. Am I devoted to the person of Jesus Christ? Mm-hmm. Am I devoted to God? Is there a commitment there, regardless of whether he does what I want him to do or not? Is there that consistency of commitment?
Yeah.
So devotion. Another quality would be attention. Am I paying attention to the person that I am speaking to? Right. And we've all had experiences when we're at social gatherings or places that we're maybe social obligations. And for us introverts, almost every social setting is a social obligation. So when we find ourselves there and we're not really present, or the person that we're talking to isn't really present, they're looking over our shoulders, or they keep looking to the clock, or they keep looking to the door. They're waiting for someone else to come in.
Check their phone or something.
They're checking their phone, right? Yeah. That is not attention, right? So there's that distraction. So am I paying attention to who I am speaking to? Am I making myself present to the Lord?
Yeah, I would have to say, without hearing any of the other qualities of prayer, that is probably the one I struggle with the most. My mind goes all over the place because when I wake up every morning, I read the daily scriptures, and then I spend time in prayer. And often when I try to stop talking so I can listen, so I'm laughing because when I was little, I would talk all the dang time, and my mom would be like, shut up and eat, because I would never finish my dinner. I would just talk the whole time. So whenever I try to stop talking so I can listen to the Lord, man, my mind goes everywhere, and I just feel very, very distracted. And so lately I've been pondering, and I haven't taken action on this yet, but maybe trying to do something like light a candle so I could focus on like the candle, or hold a rosary, or have an icon of some kind, like something to help draw my attention to Christ as I listen, as opposed to just going squirrel and going everywhere.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because
go ahead.
That is something that I always tell people, that it's important that you do that to help you, because we are sensual creatures, and we need some sort of sensual, sensate kind of interaction with something, whether it's an icon, whether it's a holy card, whether it's a crucifix. I always tell people, find something that you really find attractive, whether it's a picture of the Good Shepherd or a holy card of whatever. And during the time of prayer, keep referring back to that image. If it's an internal image, if it's an image that you can imagine in your mind and in your heart, that is what you go back to. And whenever you find yourself being distracted, instead of getting angry at yourself or being disappointed with yourself, just very gently go back to that image, whether it's you have it in your hand or in your mind, in your heart, and just go back to that very gently and just go back and refocus on that in your conversation, right? Because again, it is something that we need to cultivate. It is a learning to cultivate attention, right? And so it's part of the cultural cross that we have is we're so used to being bombarded by information constantly that when there is no information coming in, our brain goes like, okay, what's going on? So I need to fill in this space with noise because that's what we're used to.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes one of the things that's missing in our lives as disciples, as Christians, as Catholics, is the value of silence, to actually be able to be quiet.
Yeah, yeah. What I've been trying to do, which admittedly for me, I don't believe is working. I do believe that the prayer is effective on me, but I think there's room for improvement, so to speak, is wherever my mind goes. Once I've realized that my mind has gone wherever it's gone, is I offer that, whatever that thing is, to God. If it's work, if it's a hobby, if it's my family, if it's stress or feeling, whatever.
Right.
But again, trying to not go everywhere, because I would like to be able to bring whatever these things are in my life I guess purposefully to God, or very precisely, like, this is the thing that I want to bring to you. Not be so reactive, I guess, in my prayer, but to be more intentional about it.
I'm glad you brought that up, because there's two things that you brought up that are part of this whole idea of relationship. And one is, and again, this is a relationship that we're entering into, so you don't demand perfection from yourself, because
it's probably going to take the rest of your life.
Yeah, it is a process
alert.
of becoming. So the first thing is, like, I would say, like, they used to call remote preparation and proximate preparation for prayer time. Like, what am I going to pray about? So tomorrow I'm going to reflect on the readings for the liturgy, for the Mass. So the night before, I might go over them. I just might read them, and I give my subconscious time to kind of start preparing myself. So then the next day, when I get it, that would be like the remote preparation. The proximate preparation would be then, okay, I want to make sure that my phone is on silent. I want to make sure that I don't have anything pending, and I'm going to give myself to this time, spend quality time. So that would be the more immediate preparation for prayer. And the other point that you brought up about in terms of distraction, another thing that can help people is to write down those things that you're anxious about or worried about, and just, okay, this is what I'm worried about. This is what I'm worried about. I'm thinking about this. This is on my mind. And to write them out and go, okay, so in the next 30 minutes, the next 45 minutes, the next hour, whatever time you're giving yourself for prayer, say, like, this is not going to be resolved in the next 30 minutes, in the next 45 minutes, in the next hour. It doesn't really matter. There's nothing I can do about this. So I basically bracket it and put it on pause, and I will take it up again after my prayer time. So those are a couple of ways in which we can help ourselves in that relationship, or to increase the attention, is by, one, recognizing that we're not perfect and this is a process. Prepare myself for prayer, whether remotely or proximately. And thirdly, understand that there are distractions that I can sort of put aside. Make an intention to put those worries to the side for the next 30 minutes, 20 minutes, hour, whatever that time is, right?
Yeah. You said something that kind of, I don't know, turn a light bulb kind of thing. You always hear people, so you said 30, 45 minutes, an hour, however long you're dedicating to prayer. And people a lot of times, because I think a lot of people struggle with prayer. And so I've heard often or read people when they're trying to be helpful say, like, start small, start with 5 minutes, start with 1 minute, start with whatever. And that's all good and all that. But I'm not going to develop much of a relationship with my daughter if I only spend 1 minute with her or 5 minutes with her a day. Correct. So there's something more there. And it's not to say that you're doing it wrong if you're spending less than 30 minutes in prayer. Maybe it's a sum total as opposed to, each minute kind of thing that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would probably be better to spend 1 minute every hour praying with God than it would be to spend 1 minute a day. You know what I mean? Or
yeah. And it goes back to the whole question of investing in the relationship. How much time are you going to invest in the relationship?
Yeah, because it's like if I only have 20 minutes and I want to be with somebody for that 20 minutes, like I'm going to make the time to go see them or to talk with them or give them a call or shoot them a text or whatever it is, right? So it's not so much about focusing how to do it the right way as in what are you trying to do? What's the intention? Because I think God will take whatever you give him and he'll grow you, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think part of it too then is as talking about this, talking it out, the intentionality is also about making time instead of it helps being creatures of habit. It helps if you have a regular time that you're going to dedicate to the Lord. Like you said, you do it every morning. That's what you do the first thing in the morning. That's what you do. And that is your time with the Lord. And that is really, really helpful to people to have a scheduled time to pray. For us as Carmelites, we have an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon every day. We have an hour what we call contemplative prayer, meditation, or silent prayer. And we do that every morning, every afternoon. So it's there. It's part of our life. And I tell people it's important that you make time to pray. You might have to get up a little bit earlier. You might have to go to bed a little bit later. You might have to give up, dancing with the wannabes. But you need to sacrifice something to invest in this relationship. It cannot be peripheral to your life. It cannot. Mm-hmm. It's never going to work. If you're really interested in a relationship with somebody, it cannot be peripheral. And if it is, then you have to be honest about it and say, okay, it's peripheral. I'm not really that constant. I'm not really that convicted to live my Christian life. So I'm going to pray every just once in a while or whenever it's, whenever I want something. But be honest and frank about your relationship and figure out what is it that you want. Do you really want to make this a relationship of importance? And I would say this is just me. That relationship with the Lord needs to be significant because as a Christian, that should be the relationship of significance. And everything else needs to be informed by that relationship.
Yeah.
So, devotion, am I committed? Attention, internal and external. And another quality of prayer that we need to examine ourselves in is confidence. Am I confident in that relationship? Can I come to the Lord full of confidence in his love for me, in his care for me? Can I come to him in my brokenness, in my woundedness? Can I stand before him, as John of the Cross would say, to stand before God in my nakedness? Can I stand before God as I am and who I am? Have that confidence in his love for me. So devotion, attention, confidence. And another thing that is important quality of prayer is persevering, that I continue that relationship. I continue investing in that relationship, right? And it should not be seen as a relationship of wanting to get something out of it in terms of I'm going to pray to you so you can make me happy. Like, well, that's not the way it works, dude. But it's about being in a relationship with someone, period. That I trust in him. I trust that he wants my well-being. I trust that he will educate me. I want to be formed. I want to be educated. I want to make better decisions. I know I need redemption because of my brokenness and my woundedness, and that's part of the persevering in this. There is no such thing as crossing the magic line and I am good enough or holy enough. It is a continuous process of becoming that new creature that we are through the grace of baptism. So those are some of the things in terms of examining ourselves and how do I see prayer? I mean, if prayer is just about reciting formula prayers every day at a certain time, well, my relationship is going to stay there. It's not going to go anywhere because I'm not really open to a relationship of confidence and, again, transparency and that revelatory and relational aspect of who we are called to be.
Man, yeah, it shows, I think, how hard relationship is for all of us.
Yeah.
We're very selfish creatures, I think. So it's, there's relationships of convenience, right?
Yes.
I have a roommate, so my rent is cheaper, right? I'm getting something out of this. I have a friend, well, not even maybe a friendship, an acquaintance, right? This is somebody I quote unquote know, but I don't know them deeply, right? And so maybe I can talk about them in a superficial way or interact with them in a superficial way, but there's no desire to go deeper into it. And I don't think it's until you really start looking at it, kind of like you're saying, as a like a real friendship, or even to me, I start thinking, which there's probably not a coincidence here, as a family relationship, right? Father to child, child to parent kind of thing, where it's supposed to be the kind of relationship that there's no getting out of it, but it's not like you're stuck with me, so suck it up, buttercup. It's I would give my life for this relationship. And then right there you see the depth of God's relationship with us. He gave his life for us.
For us, yeah.
And yeah, it's just, so it's really kind of interesting. And in all of this, we're maybe seeing how to pray. And none of it is what it should sound like. And I kind of going back to people's lack of, either their lack of understanding or their lack of confidence in themselves, that lack of openness and authenticity with God. Because everybody, at least in the southern United States, has heard some kind of preacher praying, some kind of Southern Baptist or whatever, and they've got that sound, like the tone of their voice, the cadence of their words and all that, right? And you're like, okay, this is what prayer is supposed to sound like. And then maybe we feel stupid or like, oh, I don't sound like that, so I'm just going to keep my mouth shut because I don't know how to do that.
Right.
But that can be as hollow as just saying the Our Father 10 times.
Yes.
Right. It goes back to what's that relationship and what are you really getting at there?
Yes, Teresa, well, I don't have the quote in front of me, but Teresa talks about the importance of prayer. Teresa of Jesus, Teresa of Avila, talks about the importance of prayer and paying attention to the words you are saying and to whom you're saying, because she talks about the fact that if you're distracted, if you're not paying attention to your words and to whom you are speaking, she says, I would not call that prayer no matter how much you move your lips. So there's something there about, yeah, it's like, it's not a matter of that. And I tell people, it's like, if you're not paying attention to what you're saying, you might as well be be reciting your grandma's meatloaf recipe, because that's all the good it's doing. There's nothing there. You're performing, you're reciting, and sometimes I'll say, like, okay, so if a parrot says Jesus is the Lord. That parrot doesn't mean it's going to get to heaven just because it says Jesus is the Lord, because there's no real understanding of what it's saying.
Yeah. Well, and Jesus even warns against this, right? Talking about the guys who babble, or the pagans who babble, or whatever,
Right.
thinking that the more I talk, the more God will listen, or I can force God
Right.
into action,
Right.
or I'm doing this to be heard. And then asks us, it doesn't mean that public prayer is bad, right?
No.
Just because he says go into your room and close the door doesn't mean that public prayer is bad and all prayer should be silent and internal. It just means that, in my thought, it means that the intention should be private and internal, right? Or at least not private, but personal and internal.
Right. 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 You're praying from your heart. You're praying from your interior.
Yeah.
And that intentionality, right? And that brings up another aspect of prayer for us as Catholics, is that it is communal. It goes back to the whole idea of relationship and the fact that God has called a people, starting with Israel, and that we, as being grafted onto that call and being the new Israel, that there is a communal aspect to prayer. It's not about me and Jesus. It is about me within the people of God, in relationship with the Lord, not just for my well-being, but for the well-being of the entire community that I belong to. There is a communal aspect to our prayer.
Yeah. I guess hence the Our Father.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Yeah. And it goes back to a little bit more. We spoke earlier about the communion of saints and how death does not separate us from them. The idea that my prayer, my relationship with the Lord, that I'm being invited into a transforming relationship because Jesus is God's effective word. And one of the things then is that I belong to this communion of believers, those in space and time, those outside of space and time, and that we all are striving for and desirous of the one thing, and that is the glory of the Father, Son, and Spirit, and that glory is manifested in our own transformation. Am I being transformed? Am I changing? Is my conversion continuing on? Earlier we spoke of your conversion story, and so each one of us is in a process of continuing conversion. I really don't like it when people talk about people's definitive conversion, because I go like, that doesn't exist. There is no such thing as a definitive conversion, because I can always change my mind and turn my back. I mean, there's possibility and probability that goes along with that, but I do have that freedom to turn my back on the Lord that calls me. So whenever we talk about definitive conversion, I go like, oh yeah, that's after you die. Once you're dead, that's when it's definitive, whether you're destined to a resurrection of life or resurrection of judgment. But it is again, going back to the whole idea of communal. There's a whole army of believers outside of space and time who are desirous of my well-being. And I need to know that. I need to trust that I belong to a community of others who are praying for me and with me. So there is that Catholic community and that Catholic consideration of the communal aspect of our prayer.
Yeah, the universal church, right?
Yes.
Inside and outside of space and time. So I got a couple questions just to kind of see if we can kind of bring this to a close, because it's very clear we could talk about this forever, and perhaps we should. One is what should a Christian expect their relationship with prayer to look like? If you wanted to give somebody something to, like a mirror to hold themselves up to and say, okay, where am I? And where should I want to end up in it, as generally as you can? Because everybody's going to look different, right? So it's like, what's the general idea of where should I end up here with their prayer life?
Well, I would say the first thing is patience with yourself. That's the very, very, very first thing. To be patient with yourself in this relationship. It is a new relationship, as in all relationships. It's a little scary. It's unknown. There's a lot of things that we have to give ourselves permission to learn. So 1, be patient with yourself. 2, examine yourself in terms of, do I trust that God the Father desires my well-being? We live in a broken world, yes. And so that's not his fault. That's our fault. We live in a broken world, but do I believe that God the Father loves me so much? Do I truly understand the fact that he gave me his most precious gift, which is his son, and that I was part of the reason that son died for me? So there's that commitment. There is that commitment. That do I recognize and realize that God the Father is committed to me, and that is manifested in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. That's the second thing. The third thing would be like, don't be afraid to pray from your heart. Mm-hmm. Just to sit there. Again, treat him as a friend. Go there and just say like, dude, today I am just so tired. I don't know what to do. I'm confused. I'm angry. I'm frustrated. Or I'm blessed. Thank you for today. I saw a most wonderful creature today in some regal moth or whatever it might be that really fascinated me or something. And those are moments of prayer as well. So, and again, I would say also try to have a scheduled time for prayer so that you would become accustomed to that.
Yeah. All right. And what about, there are probably a lot of different types of prayer. So, yes. Which would be good for our listeners. Like, what kind of prayer do you want to maybe hear us dive into or dig into and kind of break apart? But Father, what kind of prayers have been very beneficial to you, or would you recommend for people? Like just different styles of prayer.
I would ask that they be willing to experiment with different types of prayer to see what is most fitting with their nature. Eventually, all prayer will come to, hopefully, transforming union with Christ, right? We all may start in different places, but hopefully we all wind up in the same place, and that is to be transformed by the love of the Father in Jesus Christ. So give yourself permission. Myself, I mean, again, I, not only as an introvert, but again, as a contemplative, for me, it is that quiet prayer, that spending time. I would say, experiment with Lectio Divina, praying with sacred scripture. Experiment with, a charismatic prayer, if that's what you want to do. Experiment with, maybe going to praise and worship. Maybe that's the way you start. Or, find different ways and something that you find attractive, because God is going to attract us by that which we find most attractive to our nature, and then lead us to himself. So give yourself permission to be led by the Spirit and find the attitude or the method that you find attractive to yourself.
All right. Well, thank you for this. This has been a fantastic conversation. Lots to think about.
I can go on for another few months on this if you want. So
yeah. And I hope our listeners got a lot out of it, and really I hope we can get some kind of engagement back and see where people are wanting to be met, right, and guided. Because I'm completely open to learning as much as I can. So hopefully some good will come from this.
Yes. Thank you, and God bless for your time.
Yep. All right. We will see you all next time. Bye for now.